pretty short video today. So test Friday, but so most transformations are congruent. The only one that isn't is if it has a dilation. So this is the one where you're just gonna describe like how they move from one to the other. Now it's possible that they aren't congruent, so you do need to like figure out are they congruent or not, and most of the time you can just tell by looking at it. It really is pretty straightforward. If you can't tell and you're not sure if one side is longer than the other, then I think the best option is to do Pythagorean theorem and then work it out. Okay, so just a couple guidelines that I've talked about before, but if I have a triangle like this, and then another triangle like this, it doesn't look all that congruent, so that's not a great drawing. A little closer, but and they're pointing the wrong way. One's pointing to the right, the other's pointing to the left. You are going to have to do a reflection to fix that. So it could be, one's pointing up and one, or down, and one is pointing up. You'd have to do, a reflection either up or reflection down, just depending on how you wanted to write it up. But if they're pointing in opposite directions, you're going to have to do a reflection. If one's pointing up and one's pointing down, but also notice, like, God, that triangle bugs me, that it's not just that one is pointing up and one is pointing down, but like the long edge on this top triangle is on the left and the long edge on this one is on the right. So if you notice, like on the red triangles that I drew on the previous one, the long side is on the right and the long side is on the right. When that happens, reflection. When one of the sides is like on the wrong side, that's going to be a clue that you need to do a rotation. Okay, and then in many instances you're going to do a reflection and a translation, because when you reflect it, it won't like match perfectly, and you'll need to move it to the right or up or down or whatever. And same thing with rotation. You're typically going to do a rotation and then a translation to make them match. Okay, so your problems, the first 4 are already graphed for you, and the first 2, it says identify any congruent figures, and again, it should be pretty easy to tell if they are congruent or not. And then it says explain. Well, your explanation is the transformation. Well, if you rotate it 90 degrees and then you do a translation 2 to the right and 4 up, they match. Like, that's your explanation. Okay, And so there's definitely more than one in each of those. There's a bunch of different figures in the graph. And then the next two, it just says describe a congruence transformation that maps ABC to A prime, B prime, C prime. So it's telling you they're congruent. Just how did I get from one place to the other? And then the last two determine whether the polygons with the given vertices are congruent. So it doesn't tell you for sure they are congruent. So you'll need to graph the two, triangles with the coordinates that they give you, or one's actually a four-sided quadrilateral, and then see if they're congruent first. Again, if you draw an accurate graph, you should be able to tell by looking at it that they're the same, or if they're not the same. So, and then if they're not the same, you just put not congruent. And then if they are the same, then you say they're congruent because I can do a reflection and then a translation. But you got to be specific. A reflection over the x-axis or the y-axis, and then write the translation rule. Okay, so remember rotation, you just put degrees, but a translation rule should be x plus 2, y minus 3, like whatever. How you have to get from the one spot to the next. Okay, so it's just 6 problems. A lot of the worksheets you've seen, I think, are pretty short, and that's okay. I want to give you time to study and you kind of go back over stuff. So, all right, have a great rest of your day, guys. See you tomorrow.